My name is Victoria, and I'm 28 years old. 3 months ago, I discovered something about my family that changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and what it means to truly belong somewhere. Have you ever received a text message that made your world stop spinning? I was sitting in my corner office overlooking downtown Seattle, reviewing quarterly reports for my tech startup, when my phone buzzed. The message was from my 12-year-old half-sister, Emma. Her words still echo in my mind. Victoria, I'm sorry you can't come to my birthday party. Sandra says there's not enough room. Sandra, my stepmother of 15 years. The woman who raised me after my mother died when I was 8. The woman I called Mom for most of my childhood. I stared at that message for what felt like hours. Emma's 13th birthday party. The milestone I'd been planning to make special for months. I'd already ordered her gift a custom-designed art studio setup worth $3,000. I'd blocked out my entire weekend. I'd even arranged to fly back from a business trip early. But apparently, there wasn't enough room for me. The party was being held at our family's lake house in Montana. The same lake house where I'd spent every summer of my childhood, where I'd learned to swim in those crystal clear waters, where Sandra had taught me to braid friendship bracelets on rainy afternoons, where my father had told bedtime stories under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. I called my father immediately. His voice sounded tired when he answered. Hi, sweetheart. How's Seattle treating you? Dad, Emma just told me I'm not invited to her birthday party. What's going on? The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Finally, he sighed. Victoria, you know how Sandra gets when she's planning events. She's just overwhelmed with all the family coming in. Family. The word hit me like a physical blow. What family, Dad? I am family. Of course you are, honey. But you know, space is limited at the lake house. And with your grandmother, flying in from Florida, and Sandra's sisters bringing their kids. His voice trailed off, but I heard what he wasn't saying. Sandra's family took priority. Sandra's comfort mattered more. I was an afterthought in the home where I'd grown up. That night, I sat in my Seattle apartment overlooking Puget Sound, watching ferries glide across dark water like ghosts. My reflection stared back from the floor-to-ceiling windows, dark hair pulled back in the neat bun I wore for board meetings, gray eyes that my mother had given me, the same eyes Emma had inherited. I thought about the woman I'd become. At 28, I'd built something most people only dream of. My company, TechFlow Solutions, had just secured $15 million in Series B funding. I employed 43 people. I owned a penthouse apartment, drove a Tesla, and had more money in my investment accounts than my father made in 5 years. But none of that mattered when your own family made you feel like a stranger. I remembered the day Sandra married my father. I was 13, the same age Emma would be turning. Sandra had knelt down to my eye level in her white dress, her hands warm on my shoulders. I know I can never replace your mother, she'd said, but I promise I'll love you like my own daughter. For 15 years, I believed that promise. Even when Emma was born and suddenly Sandra's attention shifted. Even when Sandra's parents started treating me differently during family gatherings. Even when Sandra began introducing me as Jim's daughter instead of our daughter to new friends. I'd made excuses for all of it. Sandra was busy with a new baby. Sandra's parents were from a different generation. Sandra was just being precise with language. But sitting there in the dark, Emma's text still glowing on my phone screen, I realized something that made my chest tight with recognition. I'd spent 15 years trying to earn a place that was never really mine. I'd been performing the role of grateful stepdaughter while slowly disappearing from my own family's story. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. A decision that would test every relationship I thought I understood. Let me take you back to understand how we got here. My childhood before Sandra was colored by profound loss, but also incredible love. My mother, Claire, was the kind of woman who made ordinary moments feel magical. She had this laugh that could fill an entire room, and she saw beauty in everything. Old barns were architectural marvels. Grocery store flowers were perfect for impromptu bouquets. Rain puddles were mirrors reflecting infinite sky. When I was 8, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 6 months later, she was gone. My father, Jim, was a good man drowning in grief. He worked construction then, coming home covered in sawdust and exhaustion. I remember him standing in our kitchen after Mom died, staring at the refrigerator covered in her handwritten grocery lists and my crayon drawings, looking completely lost. Sandra appeared in our lives like sunshine after a long winter. She was a kindergarten teacher with patience that seemed endless and hands that always smelled like vanilla lotion. She knew how to French braid hair and made pancakes shaped like butterflies. When she moved in, she didn't try to erase my mother's presence. She kept Mom's photos on the mantle and never threw away the little notes Mom had hidden in my lunchbox. For 5 years, we were a unit. Sandra legally adopted me when I was 15. I changed my last name to hers. I called her Mom without hesitation. During those years, I felt lucky. Not every kid who loses their mother gets a second chance at having one. Then Emma arrived. Don't get me wrong. I loved Emma from the moment I held her tiny red face in the hospital. She was this perfect little miracle with fingers like flour, petals and eyes that seemed to see straight into your soul. I was 18 and heading off to college, but I spent that entire summer helping with night feedings and diaper changes. But something shifted in Sandra after Emma's birth. It was subtle at first. The way her face softened differently when Emma cried, compared to when I needed something. The way she'd instinctively reach for Emma during family photos, positioning, her in the center while I stood slightly apart. Sandra's parents, Harold and Margaret, made the change more obvious. They'd been warm to me before Emma, but afterwards, I became Jim's daughter from his first marriage in their conversations. They bought Emma elaborate Christmas gifts while giving me gift cards. They displayed dozens of Emma's photos in their living room but kept only one of me, tucked away on a bookshelf. My father noticed but never addressed it directly. Jim had this way of avoiding conflict that came from losing someone he couldn't protect. He'd developed an almost superstitious belief that acknowledging problems might make them worse. Sandra loves you, he'd say whenever I brought up feeling excluded. She just expresses it differently than your mother did. But I knew the difference between different expressions of love and love that was conditional. Through high school and college, I threw myself into achieving. I graduated valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to Stanford, and dove into computer science with the intensity of someone trying to prove their worth. I told myself that success would earn me the secure place in my family that seemed to slip away each year. Sandra attended my graduation, took photos, posted proud messages on Facebook. But I noticed she never looked as naturally joyful at my milestones as she did watching Emma learn to ride a bike or lose her first tooth. After college, I moved to Seattle and started my company. The physical distance made family dynamics easier to navigate. Phone calls were lighter than face-to-face interactions. Holiday visits were brief enough to maintain everyone's best behavior. Emma and I stayed close despite everything. She was this bright, artistic kid who saw the world through Kaleidoscope eyes. She'd call me from Montana to describe cloud formations or share stories about school plays. When she started getting interested in digital art, I spent hours teaching her design software over video calls. That's what made her birthday text so devastating. Emma wasn't just my half-sister. She was my connection to the family I'd been trying to belong to for 2 decades. If Emma was apologizing for my exclusion, it meant the exclusion was intentional and absolute. Have you ever felt like you were performing a role in your own family story? Drop a comment if you've experienced something similar. The night after Emma's text, I made a list of every family gathering from the past 5 years. Thanksgiving dinners, where Sandra's extended family dominated conversation. Christmas mornings where Emma opened twice as many gifts. Summer barbecues where Sandra's friends treated me like a polite acquaintance rather than a daughter. The morning after Emma's text, I woke up with crystalline clarity about what I needed to do. I was going to Emma's birthday party whether I was invited or not. But I wasn't going to show up empty-handed or broken-hearted. I was going to arrive in style and show them exactly who they'd been underestimating. My first call was to Marcus Chen, my business partner and closest friend. Marcus had been with me since the early days of TechFlow, back when we were coding in my studio apartment and eating ramen for every meal. He was the brother I'd chosen, the family member who never made me question my place. They uninvited you from a 13-year-old's birthday party? Marcus's voice carried the perfect mixture of disbelief and outrage. Victoria, that's not just rude. That's deliberately cruel. I need to charter a jet to Montana, I told him. And I need you to come with me. Marcus didn't hesitate. When do we leave? Next, I called my assistant, Rachel, and had her research every detail about Emma's party. Sandra had been posting about it on social media for weeks. The guest list included Sandra's entire extended family, several of Emma's school friends, and notably, every family member except me. The theme was Art Around the World, Emma's recent obsession with international art movements. That's when inspiration struck. Through my company's connections, I arranged something that would give Emma the artistic experience of a lifetime while making a statement Sandra couldn't ignore. I contacted the curator at the Seattle Art Museum, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, whom I met at a charity auction the previous year. Dr. Rodriguez, I have an unusual request. My sister is turning 13 and she's passionate about art. I'd like to commission a mobile art exhibition for her birthday party. Within 48 hours, Dr. Rodriguez had arranged for 3 professional art educators and a selection of hands-on workshops featuring techniques from different continents: Japanese watercolor painting, Italian fresco creation, Mexican tile, making, African textile design. But the real surprise would be my gift for Emma. I'd commissioned a local artist to create a custom mural depicting Emma's artistic journey, from her first finger paintings as a toddler to her recent digital art experiments. The mural would be painted on removable panels that could be installed in her bedroom. As I planned, a deeper strategy emerged. This party would become a test, not just of my family's loyalty, but of everyone's true character when faced with the unexpected. I reached out to my paternal grandmother, Nana Rose, who lived in assisted living in Billings, just 2 hours from the lake house. At 86, Nana Rose had a sharp mind and sharper tongue. She'd been my mother's closest friend and had never quite warmed to Sandra. They didn't invite you to Emma's party? Nana Rose's voice crackled with indignation. That woman has some nerve. Your mother is probably spinning in her grave. Nana, I need you to do something for me, I said. Don't tell anyone I'm coming. I want to see their genuine reactions. I also called my cousin Jake, my father's nephew who lived in Denver. Jake was 2 years older than me and had been like a protective older brother throughout my childhood. He'd been invited to the party and was driving up with his wife and 2 kids. "Jake, I need you to do me a favor. When you get to the lake house, I want you to pay attention to how people talk about me. Don't defend me or bring me up. Just listen, and remember." The most difficult call was to Emma herself. I waited until late Thursday night, knowing she'd be in her room doing homework. "Victoria!" Her voice was bright with surprise. "I was hoping you'd call." "Hey, Art Star, how are you feeling about your big day?" "Excited, but..." Her voice dropped. "I really wish you could be here. I asked Sandra again if we could make room, and she said the house is already too crowded. But I counted, and there's definitely space." My heart broke a little more. Emma was beginning to see the truth, too. "Emma, I want you to have the most amazing birthday ever. Promise me you'll pay attention to all the special moments, okay?" "I promise. I love you, Victoria." "I love you too, little artist, more than you know." Friday night, I packed carefully. Professional but approachable clothes. The kind of outfit that said successful businesswoman without screaming, trying. Too hard. I packed the custom mural panels in protective cases and arranged for the art exhibition supplies to be delivered separately. If you've ever had to prove your worth to people who should love you unconditionally, let me know in the comments. Your stories help others feel less alone. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear. The private jet I'd chartered was a sleek Cessna, Citation that seated 8 passengers comfortably. Marcus arrived at the airport carrying coffee and his usual infectious optimism. "You ready for this?" he asked as we settled into the leather seats. "I've been ready for 20 years, I replied. Dr. Rodriguez and her team were already at the lake house, having arrived earlier that morning to set up the art stations. I'd arranged for them to introduce themselves as surprise entertainment that Emma's anonymous benefactor had arranged. The flight to Kalispell took 2 hours. Below us, the landscape shifted from Seattle's urban sprawl to Montana's endless sky and rolling hills. As we descended toward Glacier Park International Airport, my phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Rodriguez. "Setup complete. The birthday girl is absolutely enchanted. Current guest count appears to be 37 people. Quite spacious for a too-crowded venue. 37 people at a lake house that could comfortably host 50. Marcus squeezed my hand as we taxied to the private aviation terminal. "Remember, you belong there. You're not crashing a party. You're attending your sister's birthday." The drive to the lake house took 40 minutes through winding mountain roads lined with pine trees. I'd made this journey hundreds of times, but today everything looked different. Sharper, more significant. As we pulled into the familiar gravel driveway, I could hear laughter and music drifting from the backyard. The house looked exactly the same. Rustic logs and stone wraparound porch decorated with hanging flower baskets, the American flag my father insisted on flying from the front post. Through the large windows, I could see Sandra directing traffic. In the kitchen, her blonde hair pulled back in the efficient ponytail she wore when hosting. She was in her element, orchestrating the perfect family gathering. The perfect family gathering that didn't include me. Marcus and I walked around to the backyard, carrying the wrapped mural panels. The scene was like something from a magazine. Tables decorated with art-themed centerpieces, Emma's friends clustered around the various workshop stations, Sandra's family members chatting in small groups. Emma spotted me first. She was standing at the watercolor station, paintbrush in hand, when she looked up and our eyes met across the yard. Her face transformed with pure joy. "Victoria!" she screamed, dropping her brush and running toward me. The entire party went silent. 37 pairs of eyes turned to watch as Emma threw her arms around my waist, burying her face against my shoulder. You came! You actually came! This is the best birthday present ever! Over Emma's head, I watched Sandra's face cycle through surprise, confusion, and something that looked like panic. My father was standing near the grill, spatula frozen in his hand, his expression unreadable. "Happy birthday, little artist," I said, kissing the top of Emma's head. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Sandra approached us with the careful smile she used when she was trying to control a situation. "Victoria, what a surprise. I thought we discussed that space was limited." "Actually, Sandra, we never discussed anything. Emma told me I wasn't invited via text message." I kept my voice level, aware that everyone was listening. "But Dr. Rodriguez mentioned there seemed to be plenty of room when she set up the art workshops." Sandra's smile flickered. "Art workshops?" Emma bounced excitedly. "Sandra, you didn't tell me Victoria arranged for real art teachers to come. They brought supplies for Japanese painting and Italian fresco and everything. It's like having a museum birthday party." The calculation in Sandra's eyes was visible. She couldn't criticize the elaborate surprise I'd arranged for Emma without looking petty, but she also couldn't acknowledge my gesture without admitting she'd excluded me unfairly. "How thoughtful," Sandra managed. My father finally approached, setting down his spatula. "Victoria, honey, you look wonderful." He hugged me, and I could feel tension in his shoulders. "I didn't know you were planning to make it." "I chartered a jet," I said simply. "When family is important, you make it work." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sandra's mother, Margaret, chose that moment to insert herself into the conversation. "Well, I hope there's enough food." Sandra planned portions very carefully. I smiled at her with genuine warmth. "Don't worry about me, Margaret. I'm not here for the food. I'm here for Emma." "Can I open your present now?" Emma asked, eyeing the wrapped panels Marcus was holding. "After cake," I said, "but I promise it's worth waiting for." Have you ever walked into a room where you could feel the tension? Share your experience in the comments below. The rest of Emma's party unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of politeness and underlying tension. I spent the afternoon moving between art stations, chatting with guests, and watching Sandra struggle to maintain control over a narrative that was slipping away from her. The other guests, Sandra's sisters, her parents, family friends, kept giving me curious glances. Some seemed genuinely pleased to see me. Others appeared uncomfortable, as if my presence had disrupted their expectations. Jake pulled me aside while Emma was showing off her fresco creation to her school friends. "The conversation before you arrived was illuminating," he said quietly. "Sandra spent 20 minutes explaining to people why you couldn't make it. Work obligations," she said. "Too busy with your company to prioritize family." "Interesting. Narrative," I replied. "Margaret was particularly vocal about how you'd outgrown the family since becoming successful, how you probably look down on simple gatherings like this." The gift opening was the moment I'd been waiting for. Emma saved my present for last, carefully unwrapping the protective panels while everyone gathered around. When she revealed the custom mural depicting her artistic journey, the silence was profound. It's my whole life," Emma whispered, touching one of the panels gently. "Look, there's my finger painting from when I was 3, and my first digital drawing. Victoria, how did you remember all of this?" "Because I pay attention to the people I love," I said, catching Sandra's eye deliberately. The mural was more than a gift. It was evidence. Proof that I'd been present for Emma's milestones, that I knew her better than anyone realized, that my absence from today would have meant missing something important to someone I cherished. After the guests began leaving, Sandra approached me in the kitchen where I was helping clean up, uninvited but unwilling to be excluded from even the cleanup. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "I'm listening. You can't just show up places uninvited. You embarrassed me in front of my family." I set down the plate I was drying and looked at her directly. "Sandra, I've spent 20 years trying to earn a place in this family. I've been the grateful stepdaughter, the successful daughter you could brag about, the helpful big sister. But today, I realized something important." "What's that?" "I don't need to earn what should be freely given. Emma is my sister. This is my family home. My father lives here, and he's been part of my life since the day I was born. I don't need your permission to love my own family." Sandra's composure cracked slightly. "It's not about permission. It's about respect, about understanding boundaries." "Whose boundaries, Sandra? The ones where I get excluded from family gatherings but expected to send expensive gifts? The ones where I'm introduced as Jim's daughter instead of your daughter after 15 years? The ones where Emma has to apologize to me for your decisions?" My father appeared in the doorway, having obviously overheard at least part of our conversation. "Dad," I said, turning to him, "I need you to understand something. I love this family. I love Emma more than anything, but I won't keep accepting crumbs and calling it a meal. I won't keep pretending that being tolerated is the same as being valued." He looked older than I'd ever seen him, the weight of years of avoiding, difficult conversations finally visible on his face. "Victoria, you know how much you mean to us." "Do I, Dad?" "Because actions speak louder than words, and the action of excluding me from Emma's birthday party speaks pretty clearly." That evening, Marcus and I flew back to Seattle. As the lights of Montana disappeared below us, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Relief. Not happiness exactly, but the profound relief that comes from finally telling the truth. 3 days later, Emma called me crying. "Victoria, Sandra says you're not coming for Christmas because you're angry at the family. That's not true, is it? You'll still come, won't you?" "Emma, I'll always be here for you. But I need to have an honest conversation with Sandra and Dad about how we move forward as a family." That conversation happened over Thanksgiving weekend, not at the lake house, but in neutral territory, a restaurant in Billings where raised voices weren't an option. If you've ever had to have a difficult conversation with family members about respect and boundaries, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Please share in the comments below. 1 year later, everything had changed. 1 year later, I'm sitting in the same Seattle apartment, looking out at the same view of Puget Sound. But the woman looking back at me from the reflection in these windows is fundamentally different. The conversation in Billings was brutal and necessary. I laid out 20 years of feeling like an outsider in my own family. Sandra cried. Dad got defensive, then angry, then finally quiet. We talked for 4 hours about expectations, about love languages, about the difference between gratitude and belonging. Sandra admitted things I'd never expected to hear. That she'd always felt insecure about my relationship with Dad. That she worried I'd never really accept her as my mother. That when Emma was born, she'd unconsciously prioritized protecting her biological daughter over nurturing our relationship. I thought you were so strong and successful that you didn't need as much from me, she said through tears. I thought Emma was more fragile, more in need of protection. Dad acknowledged his role in avoiding conflicts that needed addressing. I was so afraid of losing another family that I pretended problems didn't exist, he admitted. I failed you both. The healing didn't happen overnight, but slowly, deliberately, we began rebuilding. Sandra started small. She began introducing me as my daughter Victoria again. She made sure I had current photos displayed in their home alongside Emma's. She started texting me directly about family plans instead of assuming I'd hear about them secondhand. Dad made bigger changes. He established new family traditions. That specifically included me. Monthly video calls that couldn't be canceled. A commitment to visit me in Seattle twice a year. Most importantly, he stopped making excuses for behavior that excluded me. Emma thrived in the more honest family dynamic. She started calling out unfairness when she saw it. "That's not fair to Victoria," became her catchphrase whenever she noticed old patterns emerging. But the most significant change was internal. I stopped performing gratitude for basic inclusion. I started advocating for myself clearly and kindly. I learned the difference between being patient with people's growth and accepting unacceptable treatment. This past Christmas was different. I flew home to Montana, but this time I stayed at the lake house as a welcomed family member, not a tolerated guest. Sandra and I cooked Christmas dinner together, and when her mother made one of her subtle excluding comments, Sandra addressed it immediately. "Mom, Victoria is my daughter. I'd appreciate you treating her that way." It was a small moment, but it meant everything. Emma, now 14, has become an incredible artist. The mural still hangs in her bedroom, but she's created dozens of pieces since then. She's planning to apply to art schools, and I've committed to supporting her dream however she needs. My relationship with Marcus remains my chosen family anchor. He reminds me that we don't have to accept dysfunction just because it comes wrapped in the package of family obligation. My business continues to grow. We just secured a major contract that will allow us to expand internationally. But success feels different now that it's not motivated by proving my worth to people whose approval I was desperately seeking. If you're watching this and struggling with family dynamics that make you feel less than valued, please know this. You deserve to be cherished, not just tolerated. You deserve to belong without having to earn it every day. You deserve family members who celebrate your presence instead of making excuses for excluding you. But also know this. People can change if they're willing to do the work. Sometimes, the relationships that require the most courage to address honestly are the ones worth fighting for. The key is knowing the difference between people who are genuinely trying to grow and people who want you to accept mistreatment for their comfort. I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like you didn't quite belong in your own family? How did you handle it? What boundaries did you have to set? Drop a comment sharing your story. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real stories about family, growth, and finding your authentic place in the world. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our families is refuse to accept less than we deserve. Remember, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, even when those people share your DNA. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to continue this conversation in the comments below.